Welcome to the news. We take a look at stories making headlines. Finance Minister Margaret Mwanakatwe says that the latest credit ratings of Zambia by Moody has nothing to do with the country's ability to repay its Eurobonds. And the opposition UPND says it cannot work with the ruling PF at any circumstance that ever arises requiring the formation of a coalition government in Zambia. And now the news in detail. Finance Minister Margaret Mwanakatwe says the latest credit rating of Zambia by Moody has nothing to do with the country's ability to repay its Eurobonds. Mrs. Mwanakatwe states that her ministry has already developed a roadmap for settling bullet payments of the country's maturing Eurobonds. She says her ministry's mapped out Eurobond strategy has, however, not been tabled in Cabinet. In an exclusive interview with Q News, Mrs. Mwanakatwe has assured the nation that she will share the strategy with the country once it has gone through Cabinet. She has since maintained that as Finance Minister, she has nothing to worry about with respect to amortizing all three Eurobonds that are respectively maturing in 2022, 2024 and 2027. Mrs. Mwanakatwe notes that her ministry has to this effect created a sinking fund where government will be setting aside some funds in the medium term. She has, however, held back from stating whether or not refinancing the first Eurobond of $750 million using a Turkish entity is part of her ministry's mapped out Eurobond strategy.
Yes, we have a Eurobond strategy, which I will share with the Cabinet. Once I've shared with Cabinet, then I'll share with the country. But we have a clearly mapped out strategy. And there's nothing to worry about vis-a-vis the redemption of the Eurobond, the 2022, the 2024, and also the final one, which is 2025 to 2027. The 750 million, 1 billion, and 1.25 billion, the three Eurobonds. So we have a clearly mapped out strategy as to how we're going to do that. We created a sinking fund now. We were going to be in the medium term, making sure that we're putting some money aside for that. So there's really nothing to worry about vis-a-vis Eurobond. The credit rating that has come about by Moody's has nothing to do with Eurobond.
Republican President Edgar Lungu has congratulated Cyril Ramaphosa for being co-inaugurated as fourth Republican President of the Republic of South Africa. President Lungu has also paid a glowing tribute to the people of South Africa for conducting a peaceful and democratic election. Speaking in South Africa when he delivered a congratulatory message on behalf of President Edgar Lungu, Foreign Affairs Minister Joseph Malanji said South Africa had demonstrated that her multi-party democracy was growing. Mr. Malanji, together with his Home Affairs counterpart Stephen Kampiongo, represented President Edgar Lungu at the inauguration ceremony of President Cyril Ramaphosa held at Loftus Park Stadium in Pretoria. President Lungu said South Africa had set a good example to other SADC countries owing to its influential position in the region. He said that the people of South Africa demonstrated calm and tolerance for each other during election and called on them to maintain the peace they demonstrated now that a new president had been inaugurated. And Mr. Kampiongo said President Edgar Lungu was happy that Zambia has superintended over a number of peaceful elections during his tenure of office as a chairman of the SADC Troika organ on politics, defense and security. He said most of the elections held recently in the region were peaceful and successful. Mr. Kampiongo said President Lungu was hopeful that SADC region will continue to be peaceful and trigger development in all sectors of the economies. He said the growing democracy among countries in the region was gratifying, adding that Zambia was expectant of increased trade volumes among SADC countries owing to the peace that the region was enjoying. This is contained in a statement made available to Zanins by First Secretary, Press and Public Relations Naomi Nyawale. The opposition UPND says it cannot work with the ruling PF at any circumstances that ever arises requiring the formation of a coalition government in Zambia. UPND spokesperson Charles Kakoma says his party and its alliance partners does not in fact foresee a situation where a coalition government can ever arise in the country. Mr. Kakoma states that his party therefore remains opposed to the enactment of the Constitution Amendment Bill 2019, which the National Dialogue Forum recently approved. He has told Q News that as far as his party is concerned, the NTF was an illegal gathering whose constitutional amendment bill will not be passed in Parliament. Ms. Kakoma says that the UPND and the Church have since resolved to mount pressure that government withdraws the said bill before it can even be tabled in Parliament. He says his party trusts that the people of Zambia want any political party that goes in government wins the presidential election by 50% plus one votes as described or as prescribed in the Republican Constitution.
PF are going to lose terribly in the next election. They will not be working with it. They will be one of the finished party. The coalition government will not arise because the UPND and its alliance partners are going to win the election by landslide by more than 60% plus one. So the question of the coalition will not arise. The constitution will kick in that the group that has won by 60% plus one will form the government without any coalition. PF are going to lose terribly in the next election. They will not be working with it. They will be one of
Governance, Elections, Advocacy and Research Services GEARS says that the Rwanda parliamentary by-election recorded high levels of electoral malpractices such as distribution of cash, foodstuffs and beer to the electorate perpetuating by the ruling Patriotic Front, PF and government officials. Giving the findings of a GEARS initiative Rwanda by-elections report, GEARS Initiative's Executive Director McDonald Chipenzi said there was too much use of government machinery and resources as was seen in the use by the presence of cabinet ministers and other government officials. Mr. Chipenzi says that the report also observed that people and electorates have lost confidence in the conflict management committees as about 15 cases of electoral violence were reported to police but none to the committee. He has, however, noted the need for police to be fair in the way they deal with cases of electoral violence, as currently police seem to favor the ruling party by following up cases reported by them faster than they do with cases reported by the opposition, as can be seen from some cases reported in Ron and the obvious Mwali Teta case in Kafue. And Mr. Chipenzi says GEARS is concerned with the fluctuating lengths of campaign periods currently being practiced by the Electoral Commission of Zambia, ECZ, for each by-election.
There was too much use of government machinery and resources as seen in the huge presence of cabinet ministers and other government officials. The campaign time allocated to political parties as jointly agreed with the Electoral Commission of Zambia and police was not obeyed, especially by the ruling party, which used government institutions like the Zambia police to undermine the timetable and further exploited presidential powers to make and prime visits in the constituency. We also noted that the time given to campaign in these by-elections continued to dwindle. If you recall, in Kafue, the political parties were given 13 days to campaign. In Ron, they were given only 27 days to campaign. In Sesheke, they were given 33 days to campaign. Now, this is a very bad practice because it seems like we don't know exactly what is the length of our campaign period. Tomorrow, when you hear that the Electoral Commission of Zambia has decided to give political parties only 2 days to campaign, you should not be surprised. And we are recommending that such kind of practices should come to an end. Let us legislate the campaign period. If it's 30 days, it's 30 days. We cannot continue to have today 2 days, tomorrow 5 days, the other day 15 days, and so on and so forth. So we need to have a very standard campaign period.
Agriculture Minister Michael Katambo has disclosed that about 19 million kwacha has been released by the Treasury to pay off all dues to agro-dealers and transporters across the country. Mr. Katambo told Q News that the Ministry of Agriculture owes several transporters and agro-dealers across the country over 500 million kwacha, which is supposed to be settled as an obligation or debt. He explains that to cushion the date, the Treasury has been releasing funds, and last week, Wednesday, about 19 million was released, which has already been paid out to some agro-dealers and transporters. Mr. Katambo says his ministry has been engaging the Treasury through the Ministry of Finance on the matter, which has assured that monies to help dismantle the dues will be released starting next week. The minister has, however, stated that the Treasury has communicated that it will only be able to dismantle the 500 million kwacha obligation in batches. Mr. Katambo says his ministry is therefore committed to settle the old dues before the start of the next farming season.
It's 19 million to pay our agro-dealers and transporters. Of course, the obligations that the Ministry of Agriculture owes several transporters and agro-dealers. We have about 500 million kwacha, which is supposed to be settled as obligations or debt that the Ministry of Agriculture owes several transporters and agro-dealers. We've been engaging the Treasury through the Ministry of Finance, who have promised that at least they will start to dismantle in batches these amounts that we owe those the Ministry of Agriculture contracted. And we are expecting some amount starting next week, at least also to pay those that we owe these obligations. So the government and the Ministry of Agriculture is very committed that we settle these obligations before we go into the next farming season, or rather before we contract these suppliers and these agro-dealers within.
The opposition UPND leader Hakainde Hichilema has advised the government to seriously consider dropping the idea of introducing goods and sales tax. Mr. Hichilema wants government to maintain the value-added tax VAT. He believes that the VAT is a fairer consumption tax for logical and technical reasons, which has a high positive impact on the economy and society at large. In a statement obtained by Q News, Mr. Hichilema has argued that the benefit of VAT lies in its ability to promote savings, capital formation and investment. Mr. Hichilema states that the sales tax, however, is penal, more costly and difficult to collect.
VAT is a tax whose possible negative effect on low-income earners can be mitigated through appropriate tax credits or allowances. VAT is a tax which is relatively cheaper and easier to collect than some other taxes, such as the PF proposed general sales tax. We advise that PF should drop or essentially not implement their inappropriate idea of replacing VAT with GST. As we have argued before, GST is penal. GST is more costly. GST is difficult to collect. Overall, the GST introduction is likely to result in the Treasury collecting less tax revenue as anticipated, which revenue is required to support health, to support education, to support food security and other social services that the people need. GST will therefore hurt households, the general citizenry, it will hurt savings, it will hurt businesses, and I mean small, medium, and large companies alike.
The Zambia Institute of Purchasing and Supply, ZIPS, has disclosed that 20% of corruption that takes place in procurement happen after contracts are being signed. ZIPS President Chivo Mwelwa says there are many situations where a contract could, for example, be signed for 10,000 kwacha but ends up being valued at 100 million kwacha after being executed. Mr. Mwelwa states that this entails that corruption could take place when specifications of a contract are being done without the involvement of any procurement personnel. He notes that this is mainly because Zambia does not have an act of parliament that deals with contract administration processes.
Once the contract is signed, there is massive corruption there. In fact, it is a known fact that 20% of corrupt activities actually take place after the contract has been signed. There are many situations where you can have a contract signed for 10 million. After the contract has been executed, that contract becomes 100 million. There's absolutely no procurement in that particular process. The engineer is making the decision. They're making the variations. During the evaluation, individuals can forget certain items deliberately. Once the contract is signed, they begin to add, this was not there, this was not there. So you're adding, by the time you are done, it's 4 or 5 times more. Now, the contract administration process is not regulated in this country. There's no act that deals with that. So there's massive corruption during that particular period.
Caritas Executive Director Eugene Kabilika says that the 4% salary increment awarded to civil servants will not help cushion the biting economy in the country. Mr. Kabilika states that the increment could be taken in the context of the prevailing economic situation and the 4% is very minimal and just a drop in the ocean. He has called upon the government to seriously look into the plight of civil servants in a way that will alleviate their suffering and poverty.
If you look at the cost of most of the goods and services, they've gone up. Talk of water, talk of the basic needs like mealie meal, and that whatever accompanies what people, most of them eat, all that has gone up. And the salaries for civil servants have not gone up for the past 3 or so years. So it is difficult, because if you look at how much money each civil servant gets and take the 4% of whatever salary they are getting, it's very minimal. Some of them will go around 200 kwacha, which is like 2 bags of mealie meal at the present moment. Some of them will go even less because of the percentage. So we don't think that the 4% increase as Caritas is going to help to cushion the biting economy for civil servants. It won't. And so they will be forced to supplement. Of course, the country is undergoing immense economic situation as a result of the rising debt. And this is where our problem is going to. We're failing to balance between what we owe people as well as what we produce. And so when you have this balance not equalizing, we have these problems. So it is really very hard for everyone. So our analysis is that the 4% is not going to do anything to improve the livelihoods of the Zambian people. We can only call upon the government and all who are concerned to look into the plight of the civil servants.
Women for Change Executive Director Lumba Sianga has noted the need for resources to be mobilized by stakeholders, which will be used to support and encourage women participation ahead of the 2021 general elections. Speaking to Q News in an interview, Ms. Sianga feels there is need to start mobilizing resources in preparation for more women participation in the 2021 general elections now. She states that one of the major factors that hinder women participation in election is financial constraints, therefore the need for resources to start being mobilized and raised now. She says that partners can come together to come up with ways of mobilizing resources which can be used to support those women interested in engaging in the political sphere, as well as hold various awareness programs in communities on the benefits and need for electors to vote for women candidates.
Because in most cases what happens is people start talking about elections when it's election year, But as Women for Change, our work involves building the capacities of rural communities, especially women and girls, to attain sustainable development. So in so doing, we mobilize women in terms of building their capacities and leadership so that at household level they are able to participate, and as well as at community level in community activities, so that they gain the confidence to claim their rights and also to work with the service providers in their areas. So that builds them their momentum towards participating as well in politics. We start at community level, and when they've gained the confidence, they can also participate in politics. So our cry is that as an organization, we can't do this alone. So we are asking for support as well from partners, donors, to start looking at building and preparing women for the 2021 elections now.
And finally, in our news, the Zambia National Teachers Union, ZANUT, has commended President Edgar Lungu for honoring his promise of paying salaries for civil servants on time. During this year's Labor Day commemorations, President Edgar Lungu assured civil servants across the country that their salaries starting this month will be paid on time, and further assuring that delayed salaries for civil servants will be a thing of the past. Union spokesperson Joe Kasaka has confirmed to Q News in an interview that teachers received their salaries on time, a situation he said should continue and be commended. Mr. Kasaka says paying civil servants on time helps them to plan and also motivates them, a situation that enhances productivity in the workplace.
Thank government, especially the president, for the commitment that he made on Labor Day, that civil servants now, their salaries will no longer be delayed. Apparently this has come to fruition because we have seen our civil servants, they've already been empowered. So what we can just appeal is that we hope this spirit continues, and we should forget the issues of civil servants trying to expect a salary that does not seem to be coming. We are just thanking the president that he has honored what he promised on Labor Day, and we think this one should continue for the betterment of our civil service.
As we end the news, a quick recap of stories making headlines in our news. Finance Minister Margaret Mwanakatwe says that the latest credit rating of Zambia by Moody has nothing to do with the country's ability to repay its Eurobond. And the opposition UPND says it cannot work with the ruling PF at any circumstance that ever arises requiring the formation of a coalition government in Zambia. That's all from our news desk. It's bye-bye and God bless.